When yakety sax plays, the world knows chaos is about to unfold. That frantic saxophone melody became the universal soundtrack of comedy mayhem. But it all started with one man's revolutionary approach to television sketch comedy. Benny Hill transformed British entertainment when The Benny Hill Show debuted on BBC television on January 15, 1955, combining music hall traditions with cutting-edge visual gags that needed no translation. While other comedians relied on witty dialogue, Hill pioneered a style of physical comedy that spoke every language through pratfalls, double takes, and perfectly timed slapstick. Over 13 years on the BBC, he created a template for comedy that would influence generations of performers and establish Britain as a powerhouse of televised humor. Before the Thames television years made him a global phenomenon, the BBC era laid the foundation for comedy gold that still makes audiences laugh today. Early BBC years, 1955 to 1957, Benny Hill's television debut on January 15, 1955, marked the beginning of a comedy revolution that nobody saw coming. The first 3 episodes of The Benny Hill Show aired sporadically throughout 1955, with Hill still finding his footing in the new medium of television. These early shows were rough around the edges, but showed flashes of the genius that would soon emerge. Hill was transitioning from his background in variety theater and radio, learning to adapt his comedic timing for the intimate nature of television cameras. The show took a brief hiatus before returning in March 1957 with a more confident Hill and a clearer vision. This return marked the real birth of his television persona, introducing the foundation of what would become his signature style. He began experimenting with the visual gags and character work that would define his career, moving away from traditional stand-up comedy toward the sketch-based format that became his trademark. Episodes like Saturday Comedy Hour showcased his ability to inhabit multiple characters within a single show, often playing both straight man and comic relief. During this period, Hill was still working with limited resources and smaller production teams, which actually forced him to be more creative with his comedy. He started developing his knack for physical comedy and facial expressions that could carry jokes without dialogue. The supporting cast was minimal, with players like Jeremy Hawk and Patricia Hayes providing solid foundations for Hill's increasingly elaborate character work. These early years established the template for success, proving that Hill's unique blend of innocence and mischief could translate beautifully to television screens across Britain, setting the stage for his eventual domination of British comedy. ATV sojourn and BBC return, 1957 to 1961. Hill's brief exodus to ATV between 1957 and 1960 proved to be a crucial period of experimentation that would ultimately strengthen his comedic voice. At ATV, he had more creative freedom and a bigger budget, allowing him to explore different production techniques and sketch formats. The 9 episodes produced during this era showed Hill pushing boundaries, incorporating more elaborate set pieces and testing the waters with edgier material. However, the commercial television environment at ATV didn't quite mesh with Hill's developing style, and he found himself missing the more collaborative atmosphere at the BBC. When Hill returned to the BBC in 1961, he brought with him a refined understanding of television production and a clearer vision of what The Benny Hill Show could become. This return marked the true emergence of his iconic characters, particularly Fred Scuttle, the bumbling, gap-toothed everyman who would become one of Hill's most beloved creations. Scuttle's hapless adventures in various professions provided a perfect vehicle for Hill's gift for physical comedy and character acting. The supporting cast began to solidify during this period, with recurring players who understood Hill's comedic rhythms. Episodes featured increasingly sophisticated visual gags and the beginnings of his famous quickie segments, those brief comedic vignettes that would become a show trademark. Hill's confidence grew exponentially, and audiences responded enthusiastically to his evolving style. The show's popularity surged, earning critical praise and establishing Hill as a major television personality. This period laid the groundwork for his peak years, demonstrating that his unique brand of visual comedy could sustain a regular television series while continuously evolving to surprise and delight viewers. Sitcom experiment, 1962 to 1963. In a bold departure from his sketch show format, Hill embarked on an ambitious experiment with a traditional sitcom simply titled Benny Hill. Running for 19 episodes across 3 series, this venture saw Hill playing a completely different character each week, showcasing his remarkable range as a performer. Unlike his sketch shows where he juggled multiple personas within single episodes, this format challenged him to sustain single characters for entire half-hour episodes, creating mini-dramas with comedic elements. The sitcom format allowed Hill to explore deeper character development and more complex storylines. Episodes like Portrait of a Bridegroom and The Mystery of Black Bog Manor demonstrated his ability to handle both romantic comedy and mystery parody with equal skill. Hill's characters ranged from bumbling bachelors to hapless employees, each bringing their own unique neuroses and comedic potential. The show proved that Hill wasn't just a master of quick gags, but could also sustain longer narrative arcs while maintaining his signature physical comedy style. However, the experiment ultimately revealed that Hill's true genius lay in variety and spontaneity rather than sustained character work. While the sitcom episodes were well received and showcased his acting abilities, both Hill and audiences seemed to prefer the rapid-fire pace and multiple character changes of his sketch format. The experience wasn't wasted, though, as it taught Hill valuable lessons about character development and timing that he would later incorporate into his sketch work. By 1963, he was ready to return to the format that had made him famous, armed with new skills and a deeper understanding of his comedic strengths. The sitcom experiment proved definitively that Hill's gift was in keeping audiences guessing, not settling into predictable patterns. Peak BBC era, 1964 to 1968. The final BBC years represented Hill at his creative zenith, having perfected the formula that would make him a household name. Returning to his beloved sketch format, Hill unleashed a torrent of creativity that established many of his most enduring characters and comedic techniques. These years saw the full flowering of Fred Scuttle's various incarnations, from incompetent television director to hapless tour guide, each appearance adding new layers to the character's lovably inept persona. The introduction of Jackie Wright during this period proved to be comedy gold. The diminutive bald actor became Hill's perfect foil, enduring countless head slaps and physical mishaps with stoic determination. Their dynamic created some of the show's most memorable moments, with Wright's deadpan reactions perfectly complementing Hill's manic energy. Supporting players like Bob Todd and Henry McGee also began appearing regularly, forming the ensemble that would become synonymous with Hill's comedy. This era showcased Hill's mastery of visual storytelling, with increasingly elaborate sight gags and perfectly choreographed physical comedy sequences. His ability to convey entire storylines through facial expressions and body language reached new heights, creating comedy that was genuinely universal in its appeal. Episodes featured more sophisticated production values, allowing for elaborate costume changes and set pieces that enhanced the comedic impact. Tragically, the BBC's policy of wiping tapes means that the final 3 episodes from 1968 are lost forever. existing only as 20 minutes of filmed inserts. This loss represents a devastating blow to comedy history, as these final BBC shows captured Hill at his absolute peak before his move to Thames Television would transform him into an international phenomenon. The BBC years of The Benny Hill Show established the fundamental DNA of British television comedy that would influence generations of performers. Hill's revolutionary approach combined the best of music hall tradition with television's intimate possibilities, creating a hybrid form that had never been seen before. His mastery of visual comedy transcended the limitations of black and white broadcasts and modest BBC budgets, proving that brilliant timing and physical comedy could create magic from the simplest setups. Technically, Hill pioneered many comedy television techniques that became industry standards. His use of quick-cut editing, reaction shots, and carefully choreographed physical gags demonstrated how television comedy could be cinematic while remaining distinctly theatrical. The development of recurring characters like Fred Scuttle showed how sketch comedy could build ongoing relationships with audiences, creating anticipation and familiarity that enhanced each appearance. Hill's cultural impact during these formative years cannot be overstated. He proved that British comedy could be exported successfully, laying groundwork for the international success that would follow. His influence on comedians from Monty Python to Mr. Bean is evident in their commitment to visual storytelling and character-based humor. The show's blend of innocence and innuendo, sophistication and silliness, created a template that balanced broad appeal with genuinely clever writing. Most importantly, Hill's BBC era demonstrated that comedy could be both intelligent and accessible, highbrow and lowbrow simultaneously. He elevated slapstick to an art form while never losing sight of comedy's primary purpose, making people laugh. These 13 years created the foundation for what would become one of television's most enduring comedy legacies. The Benny Hill Show proved that visual comedy could transcend cultural boundaries. From its 1955 debut to the 1968 BBC finale, it gave us 13 years of groundbreaking sketch comedy. If you enjoyed this comedy retrospective, hit subscribe for more legendary TV breakdowns.